Well, it's April 4th here, 2018 in Central Illinois, and there's definitely not any planting going on because it's so cold and wet outside. So we decided to make a 4HP video for the SeedStar 4HP planters. Those are new for model year 2018. And with that, we've got a 4600 monitor attached to the armrest in an 8400R. Now, this has got a premium activation on it, and it also has the Generation 2 server installed so that it is compatible with the 4HP planter. Now, we've got some run pages set up here, and you'll kind of take note of that as you'll have to set up a run page that's compatible with your setup as well. But this one has most everything you're going to need with the touch of one button or touching one section of the screen. Take note of the layout of the monitor on these bottom row of buttons down here, as well as the layout of the screen. Again, we've set this up so that you have pretty much access to all parts of the planter without having to go through a bunch of menus or a bunch of steps to get there. So we'll start going through the monitor. So I've got my population up here at the top. I've got my margin. If you've got pneumatic row cleaners, those are going to be right here. I've got my singulation percentage, and I've got my seed spacing. Down at the bottom, I've got my bar graph for my population. I also have my sections for my section control. Over on the top right is my EPG. This is for the generator to run the high-speed ExactEmerge row unit. And then I have pretty much my fold box is right here on the far right. And down on the very bottom, this is where I'll set my vacuum for the planter. The planter has the easy fold option as well as the vacuum automation, and we'll go through those individually later. So I want to start up here with population. So right now you can see that my target population is 36,000. If I'm running a standard rate, just a straight rate across the planter, if I wanted to change that, I would simply hit 36,000, which I have selected currently. If I wanted to change it, I come to my list, and let's say I wanted to select 34,000. I would select the bubble over here, and once I select that, then I can go ahead and back out. Now my population's 34,000. So over here, if I want to go back to my main run screen, I'm going to hit those 6 tiles, and now I'm back to my main run screen. So again, to change it, I just select it, I go into my rates, I pick the one I want, and then I've now set my population to something different. My margin for my gauge wheels. Now this planter is equipped with hydraulic downforce, but it would be similar if you had the airbag system as well. So I'm going to select gauge wheels. So right now I'm showing that my target margin is 150 pounds. If you'd like to change that, if you wanted to go say to 200 pounds, simply come into here, type in 200, hit OK. Hit back out. Now my margin target is 200 pounds. Now these bar graphs will show you as you're moving through the field. Obviously we're here on the lot because field conditions definitely aren't fit. But this bar graph right here would show you what each individual row was showing for margin, so you could see each individual row. Now down below that, right now we're looking at applied force. So right now you can see that we're not putting a lot of pressure on the hydraulic downforce system. Again, we're on the lot, so we've got the planter in the air, so my applied force is not very much right now. And in fact, you can see that the average across the planter is about 44 pounds. If I switch to this button, this is giving me a percentage of ground contact. So what this means is the percent of time that those gauge wheels on the planter are sensing load. So you're going to want that running in the 98 to 99 or 100% range all the time. If you see that dipping in that, below that 98% threshold, I probably would start increasing my margin up here. So again, this needs to be watched pretty carefully, and you need to make sure that that's running at, at least 98%. So you get a planter average, and then you get the poorest performing row right here in this gray area. So that's your margin. So we'll go back to our main screen over here with our 6 tile button. And now if I want to look at my row cleaners, I can simply touch them. I've got 3 presets. So I've got preset 1, 2, and 3. Now, right now I'm on preset 1, and you can see, again, my planter is up right now. If I wanted to raise all of my row cleaners, I could select this button, and that would raise all of that would raise all of my row units. Right now I've got them lowered, so you can see my target up pressure is 26, my target down force for the center rows is 24, and the target down pressure for the wings is 24. That's a pretty good place to start, around 25 for each one of those as a target, and then you'll have to fine tune that as you go through the field. So if I lower the planter down, I'll go ahead and lower the planter down by selecting number 1 down. Yeah, I'm about out of seed. But what that'll do is that'll activate that, and once you start moving, you'll see it start to add or reduce pressure. Now you also have a low pressure warning up here. If your tank pressure gets low, this red light will come on, and right now it says low tank pressure warning, because I got that shut off right now, because again, we're on the lot and we're not moving. But once that pressure comes up to snuff in the air tank, it'll begin to go ahead and change these actual down force and up force. Now the up pressure is going to be the same all the way across the planter. So whatever I set for up pressure in those up pressure airbags, that's going to be consistent across the entire planter. But I can set my wings and my center frame independently for downforce. A lot of times if you're running in conventional till especially, you'll see the dirt kind of basically bubbling up between the tires. So if you've had them all set the same, then what you would notice is that the center row cleaners are really plowing bad. So that's something to keep in mind on that. So you can adjust your center and your wings independently, but the up pressure is going to be the same all the way across the planter. Now keep in mind the up pressure, that's going to have to be set to where it overcomes the weight of the row cleaner, and then the downforce can be applied to go ahead and set the height and the firmness or the stiffness of those row cleaners so they either float more or float less. And again, I've got 3 different presets that I can set for that. So I'm going to go ahead and raise the planter back up, and I'm going to go back to my 6 tiles here. So another box on the screen is singulation. And what singulation is showing me is I have a bar graph that shows singulation all the way across the planter. I've got one for multiples and I've got one for skips. It also tells me what the average percentage of doubles or multiples across the planter is and the row that is performing the worst. I have the same thing for skips. I have the average across the entire planter, and then I have the row that is performing the worst, and I will also get a bar graph representation across the planter to dictate to me in a visual sense as to what that singulation really actually looks like. Notice as I've been changing screens, I've never lost my population bar graph. That's one of the nice things about the new 4HP is I always have my bar graph here at the bottom, so I can always see my population. So I'm going to go back to my main screen, and the last thing I want to go into is seed spacing. Now this is coefficient of variation, and it's showing my average of my skips and those kinds of things right now, just like the last screen did. But over here I've got my bar graph of my coefficient of variation. So if you guys had, SeedStar 3HP or SeedStar XP, you're probably familiar with coefficient of variation. That should run on average in that 0.1 range with an ExactEmerge planter. If you get some really extreme size seed, some really large or really small seed, it might vary off of that a little bit, but it should be in that 0.05 to 0.1 range most of the time. I also have a little ... or more button right here. There's a couple other things in here if you want to watch your meter and your brush RPMs or the brush and meter torque. That might be something if you're having an issue and you're trying to diagnose a problem. Those might be some good ones to use. Curve compensation, that's turned on, and you'll probably want to leave that on. So as you make a turn in the field, your outer rows will speed up to maintain the proper population, and then the inner rows on the inside of that turn will actually slow down. So that's something you're going to want to leave on. The last thing in here is ride quality. Again, if that's something you want to watch, you certainly can select it, and then you can see a bar graph representation of ride quality. But I'm going to go back to our main screen here, and now that we've kind of gone through all of these, I want to kind of direct your attention down here to the main bar graph for my population. So I've got my high row, my low row, and then if I want to watch a specific row, I can simply touch that R1 for row 1, type in the row that I want to watch, and it'll give me the population of that row at all times right there. If I notice a row is acting weird and I want to go in and investigate more, I can simply touch. So let's say row 10 was causing a problem, it was being erratic or whatever, and I wanted to go in and look at it. I can touch row 10, and notice it zoomed in up here at the top. I touch row 10 again. Here's every data point available for row 10. So I just kind of zoomed in so I could see exactly what's going on with row 10. Of course, population, my spacing, coefficient of variations, double skip, margin, all those things that I want to know about that row, I can see by simply just touching what row it is. So if I wanted to jump over to row 18, I could touch here, go to 18, I can have the exact same thing. So that's pretty new, the zoom feature they call that, and it's pretty slick again for trying to go in and see if you've got a row that's causing you some issues. So go ahead and go back to our main screen. So now, before I get to planting, I've got to turn on my EPG, or my electronic power generator. So on this particular tractor and planter setup, it's actually hooked to the PTO. So I'm going to go ahead and switch on my PTO. Now, once your PTO is running, or if you've got the hydraulic version, you want to turn on your SCV to run your hydraulic generator, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to turn on the generator. Once it's on, I'll get the green light, and it tells me that everything is working well. Okay, so now the planter can actually plant. It can actually turn the meters. Now all this is doing is running the meters and the brush. It doesn't do anything with the lights or the fold console, anything like that. Those are all still 12 volt, where all those motors running your brushes and your meters are running on 56 volts off of that power generator. So I don't need to have this on if I'm simply folding the planter up, putting it in the shed, or something of that nature. If I want to plant, then I've got to have my power generation on. So something new that came out in 2017 was the fold functions as part of the monitor. So if I wanted to fold it, right now I've got it in plant mode. You can see I'm in plant mode, and I can select, if I want to select the left or right marker. I also have the markers in auto mode, so they will automatically switch whenever I raise and lower the planter each time. But I still can select one. If the wrong one is selected to go down, I can actually select it and make the one that I want to go down go ahead and go down. So if I want to go into fold, if I want to fold the planter up, I simply select it. Now what this is saying is make sure that you've got your SCVs in a non-detented state. That way, if you start poking buttons, the planter's not going to move on you when you don't expect it. So there's two ways that I can fold the planter. So if I go to transport, because I'm going to fold again, it's just reminding me not to do anything if I've got it in detent. So if I just wiggle my SCVs and make sure that none of them are on. So now I've got manual control. So I've got my wing fold and my wing wheel lift, just like the old fold box that used to be in the window. Or I've got easy fold. Okay, so I'm going to pull up here a little bit. So now my planter's in a safe place where I can fold it. So if I want to go to easy fold, right now you notice I've selected the easy fold bubble. The next thing I have to do is I have to hit my auto steer resume switch. Once I hit my auto steer resume switch, you'll see the start easy fold button became live. Once I touch that, now I just have to move my SCV lever, and the planter is going to raise the 3-point. It's going to fold the planter up, and all I'm doing is holding on the SCV lever. I'm not doing anything with any switches. I'm not doing anything with any buttons on the screen. I'm simply holding on the SCV lever. So the planter's folding up right now, and so right now it's just telling me it's folding my wings up, and as they're coming around, it's just giving me the little circle going in a kind of chasing its tail there. So I'm just about 3/4 of the way folded up. Now it actually raised the 3-point to the proper height so that those hooks, when the planter folds up, those hooks, it actually will clear. And then once it clears those hooks and gets all the way folded up, Once it gets all the way folded up, it'll go ahead and raise the 3-point up into transport. So you might have felt the shake there, and so now I'm going to raise, it's going to raise the 3-point. There goes my 3-point all the way up. And now it's raising my wing wheels and my transport lift to raise the back end of the planter up so I can get up and over those humps in the road. Once it's done, it's going to give me this green check mark telling me that everything's folded up and I'm ready to go to the field. Conversely, if I want to unfold the planter, I do the same thing. I come into my fold box, I go to easy fold, I'll hit my auto steer resume, I'll hit start easy fold right here. Now I just move my hydraulic lever the other direction, and it's going to let my wing wheels down right now. And now it's getting ready to drop the 3-point. There goes the 3-point. And now we're unfolding the planter. The only thing you really have to remember to do is make sure that you're in neutral, so that way that the tractor can move that way you don't damage or put an undue stress on those outer wing wheels. So we're just about unfolded here. About 3/4 of the way. It's going to get all the way unfolded, and when it does, you're going to get the little green check mark there. That's going to show that we're all the way done and we're all the way into plant mode. So once it gets all the way unfolded, it's lowering the hitch. It's lowering the hitch down for me. The hitch is lowered, and I got the green check mark. So I can hit done. Now I switch to plant mode. Again, it's just reminding me, hey, make sure your SCVs aren't in detent. Click OK. So now I'm back into plant mode. If I want to turn my markers on, I simply hit markers. If I want it in auto or manual mode, I can select that on or off. The other thing in my fold box is my wing downforce. So if you've got the hydraulic weight transfer system loaded, or it was ordered with your planter, here's where I turn it on. Now I can't do any adjusting or any type of modification here in the cab. I have to get out and go back on the planter frame. There's a valve block back there that I have to adjust, but this actually turns it on and makes it live so that it will work. So once I've got it unfolded, I'm ready to plant. I simply back out of it. Now I've got everything set for planting. But that's how we're going to do easy fold. Last thing I've got here is my vacuum. So this is a 8R tractor and a new ExactEmerge planter, so I have what they call vacuum automation. So if I touch my vacuum, it's going to bring up and I can select what my target vacuum is. So if I want my target vacuum to be 22 on the left motor and 22 on the right motor, I can select that. Now all I really need to do from this point on is detent my vacuum SCVs. So I've got those in 3 and 4. So I'll select 3 and 4 into detent. Now notice as my vacuum starts to build, it's only going to go so high. What I would have to do next, if I had the seed in the planter, I'd want to go ahead and hit that fill button. Once I hit that fill button, it's going to charge the meters. And after I've charged the meters, then my vacuum will go ahead and go on up to the prescribed amount I've got over here for my target vacuum setting. But until I hit that fill meter button, they're going to stay somewhat at a lower setting, just to keep the motors from going way high on the hydraulic flow. So again, you got to hit the fill to go ahead and get it to go to target. So I'm going to go ahead and shut those down back into float now. And you'll see them start to coast back down. So along the bottom screen here, I've got a couple things. So my setup button took the place of my resources, my equipment, and my documentation. So if I go into setup, I've got where I can put my farm and field in, so I can select that, so I see my client farm and field. So I've got Sloan Implement as my client, Tom Sloan as my farm, and my field is Assumption. You can add or choose from your already pre-populated list. The other thing I've got is my 8R tractor. So my GPS offsets, I've got those loaded in there. It also has my connection offsets. So my rear 3-point, which is what this planter is, I've got it 55.4. If I was running a drawbar planter, I could select drawbar and then it would go ahead and reset those actual offsets. I've got the same thing for my planter. It knows it's a rear 3-point. My pivot offset back to that pivot pin is 15.7 inches. Number of rows is 24 rows. It's a 30-inch planter. This is the old letter C, where if I had a wide, narrow guess row, letter C is where I would put in that offset. And then this was the old letter D. You can still see they've kept that common terminology. This was the point back to where my wheels are located, so that as I'm making a curve, it can somewhat estimate how that planter is making that turn. If I scroll on down my work point, so this 24.3 inches, that's going to be where I'm set up for my section control to work off of that number right there. It shows where my gauge wheel sensors are located, my ride quality sensors are located, and then what rows my vacuum sensors are located. I've got one rank for my hydraulic downforce. I don't have any fertilizer on this planter. This is my mechanical delay offsets for section control. Now those are pretty much the standard settings right out of the factory. I wouldn't recommend changing those much in here. I'll show you in just a little bit how we'll modify those. But here's where you can put in the base settings, is right here. We also have the group outer rows selected. What that's going to mean is the rows 1 and 2 and then rows 23 and 24 are going to be grouped together. All the other rows will be individual rows. Now this machine happens to have RTK, and so that's probably a good way to set that up. But with the limitations of the 2630 that we had on previous models, we were limited to 16 sections. Now with the Gen 4, we have a lot more sections at our disposal, but we still choose to go ahead and group rows 1 and 2 and 23 and 24 together. Now, if you want them all to be individual rows, just simply uncheck that, and then all the rows will be individually controlled, and they won't wait for the other row to get in and out. So that's going to cover the tractor. Now, we've got our crop in here. Is corn. I've got my variety. Now, if you were going to plant a dual variety and you wanted to plant more than one population, you'd go in here and cover that. So I could select a dual. That would split the planter half and half, and I could select my variety. So if I wanted to do dual, I could go in here and I could select my other number, say OK, and then now I can go back to my population screen, and it'll go ahead and it'll split that planter. If I want to do a custom, maybe I'm doing some seed corn or a sweet corn application, and I want to plant different populations, I can go in there and select up to 6 different varieties and 6 different populations if I so choose. I'm going to stick with the single for now, just for simplicity's sake, but if you wanted to do that, you would do that in the setup. Also, right now I'm on controller rate, which would be a standard rate. If I went into, and when you had a prescription loaded, right here's where I would load my prescription, and I would select the RX. So that covers the setup button. So this work button, this is going to tell me my recording is on or off. My guidance button, I'll go in here. Here's where I'm going to set my auto steer. Here's where I would set, okay, I want to view rate. And then here's also where I would set that bar graph. So if I want my colors to be differently, I can simply touch the legend. So if I wanted to set my top rate at 36,000 and I wanted my bottom color to be at 30,000, I would simply select that, and now I've selected my color so that my map would paint. This is my fast start button. So what fast start does, most of you are probably familiar with quick start. Quick start was the old system with the hydraulic drive motors that when you let the planter down, you had 6 seconds to move, and then when you moved, it would start planting. Now the drawback to that is you could potentially, or most likely would potentially, have a skip. With fast start, what that does is as soon as you let the planter down, you can either hit fast start if you've got it selected in manual mode, and it will start planting at 1 mile per hour for up to 6 seconds, and then it will time out. If you've got it set up in automatic, then as soon as you lower the planter, it's going to start planting at 1 mile an hour for 6 seconds, and after that 6 seconds, it's going to time out. So that's the fast start button. The other button is seed star. So this takes me into some of my other setup functions. So I've got my fill and purge buttons here. Now we talked about fill to charge the meters. Purge is going to get rid of the seed in the brushes. I also have an advanced setting button up here at the top. So if I select that, Here's where I can set up my advanced rate setup. So if I wanted to run multiple populations across the planter, I would need that checked. If I don't, I simply uncheck that, and now it will go back to simply a standard rate. If I want to auto enable fast start, well, as soon as I lower the planter, I would check this box. If I want to manually engage fast start, then I would have that box unchecked. Either way you do it, I would make sure that section control is overridden, because you don't want it to start planting and then have it stop planting because of section control when you're expecting it to go ahead and start planting. My downforce incremental adjust, if I use the plus or minus button, is in 10 pounds. The pause timer, so if I'm going through a wet area where I don't want active downforce to be working, the pause timer will pause for 10 seconds. Here's my incremental adjust for my vacuum, so it'll adjust. If you hit the plus or minus, it's going to adjust in 1/2 inch of water increments. Here's the setup that you'll need to go through to get Easy Fold and vacuum automation to work. Right there's your SCV settings, so you'd go in there and tell it what each SCV is doing, and then it'll know which SCV to use for Easy Fold and vacuum automation. Lastly, I've got my row cleaners turned on. If I want to reset my presets back to the default, I can set that. And then you need to make sure that this enabled up pressure adjustment is check marked. Otherwise, you'll only have the ability to put downforce pressure on it. You won't be able to do it. You won't be able to have any up force, and you're going to want both. Otherwise, those row cleaners will plow. Last thing is your override switch. And if you want to have your agitator or your blower running, you're going to want those pretty much checked all the time. So we're back out of our advanced settings, and then we'll go ahead and go back to our main run screen. The other thing, if I want to do a quick change of population, I can hit this button I've got set up. I can select a different rate, hit OK. Now I've selected my other population rate. My ISOBUS VT, this is where my Starfire receiver will be located. I can select that, and then there's a list of things I can choose from, and one of those will be my Starfire. The last button down here is my section control. So this turns my section control on. I've got the little green on, or I touch it again, that turns my section control off. Now, you want to make sure that this is on this bottom run page, so you don't have to go hunting for it if you need to turn section control off for some reason or another. So if I turn it on, it just simply turns green. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to scroll to my next page. Okay, I've got a map set up on this page. I also have my client farm field here. There's that pause button for my gauge wheel margin. I've got a button there. And then I've got kind of an acre counter totals page set up right here conveniently on a run page. The last run page I've got set up is my normal tractor home page. So again, these are all going to want them to say auto. My hydraulic downforce is plumbed into number 5, so it's on currently. All the other ones are set to auto. So now we'll go ahead and scroll back around, and now we're back to our planter home page. So the last thing I want to cover is how do I adjust my section control to, if I find that I have a skip or an overlap that's more than what I'm expecting, how do I adjust those times? So I'm going to go into my menu button, and this should be the only thing you really need to leave these home pages for if you've got them set up like this. If you go to menu, and then you're going to come over here to applications, you're going to scroll down one, and you're going to select section control. Now something they've done that's pretty cool is your overlap settings are right here. So you're going to want those pretty much set to 100%. Your interior boundaries, you're going to want to make sure you plant everywhere. Now if you were spraying, that would be probably something different. But for planting, you're going to want to have 100% coverage. The really cool thing is this performance tuning. So before, when I had to figure out, do I raise my turn on time? Do I lower my turn off time? What do I have to do to get it right? They've really smoothed that out and made that a much easier process. So if I go into performance tuning and I click the next button, I've got entering planted area and exiting planted area. So planted area would be, for example, my headlands where I've already planted my intern rows. So what I could do is I could say get out, and I've dug the seed, and I realize that I have a 3-foot skip. You know, it didn't plant all the way to the headland. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select skip right here, I'm going to put in that I had a 3-foot skip, and I'm going to tell it when I was entering the headlands, I'm going to tell it I was running 8 miles an hour. Okay? When I do that and I hit next, it's going to actually change the number for me. I don't have to think about it. I just tell it, okay, I've got a skip, and I was running 8 miles an hour entering my headland. Same thing coming out of the headlands back into the field where you haven't planted yet. Maybe this time I've got an overlap, and I'm going to say it's 2 feet, and I was only running 6 miles an hour when I was coming out of the headland. It just changed the number for me. So they've really smoothed this out. They've really made this a lot easier, and it's a little bit more foolproof than what it was before, where you had to figure out, okay, do I change it 2/10, do I change it 3/10, or which one do I change? Do I go up with it? Do I go down with it? They pretty much eliminated all of that and kind of done the work for you. You just got to get out and figure out how big of a skip or overlap you have and how fast you were traveling when you cross that last end road. I'm going to cancel that because I don't want to change my settings for right now, and I'm going to get back to my main Planet Run page. Well, hopefully that covers 4HP. Again, hopefully we get some warm weather and get this ground warmed up and dried out, and hopefully you have a safe and productive spring. Thanks again from Sloan Implement.